Hey guys, Nick Armenis here. And in today's video, I want to cover off return on ad spend. So have you ever wondered why your Google ads aren't delivering the returns that you expected? You might be overlooking these 7 critical factors that I'm going to cover off. So let's dive in and turn around your campaigns. Number 1, and this is actually probably the most important one, is unrealistic expectations. What I find with most people is they go into this with the completely wrong assumption on what their performance is going to be, and they just base it on a number that they've pulled out of thin air. This is actually more common than you think, or they're basing it on a different campaign platform and what return on ad spend they get there. So maybe they've only run email marketing campaigns or meta campaigns, and it might just be a retargeting campaign they have set up. Basically, people go into this and assume they're going to get a particular return on ad spend, having either never run Google ads or not had too much experience with them, and then assuming that the result they're getting is actually poor. So I think the first thing is actually to have a good return on ad spend is going into this with a realistic expectation of what's possible and what's not. What I've found with most businesses is that they sit between 3 to 6 times return on ad spend, anywhere in between. There's people lower, there's people a lot higher. I've seen things, 25, 40 times return on ad spend. Normally what happens, and this isn't always the case, the higher up you go in ad spend, the broader Google's going to go. And so what happens is your return ad spend actually goes down as you scale because you're competing with more and more people over fewer and fewer search terms. And I guess where this unrealistic expectation comes from leads into the second point. So I think a lot of the time the reason ROAS is poor and the expectations aren't correct is that a lot of people don't actually have a proper understanding of Google Ads marketing and where it fits into the total marketing picture and what Google Ads are good at and what they're not good at. And what I mean by this is that certain campaign types are good at certain things, others are not. And where does Google fit into the overall marketing funnel? My previous video that talks about my strategy that I use on 8-figure plus brands goes through a marketing funnel. And so it addresses which parts of Google are good at which areas in the funnel. So if you're using the wrong campaign types, you're probably not going to get a good return on ad spend. And when I'm saying understand Google Ads is understand where it fits. It really over-indexes at bottom of funnel traffic. So quite often I find that Google Ads gets a better return on ad spend than a Facebook ads campaign or Facebook ads in total because there's a lot of remarketing that happens in Google and a lot of the traffic you get is branded search terms, and branded search terms are going to have a much higher return on ad spend than non-branded. So to properly have a good return on ad spend, you actually need to understand how Google ads work. And as I said, they're really getting like high intent buyers. We're not putting this ad onto some random person that clicked, they like dogs on Facebook. This is someone searching for something specific. That said, there's different search terms that address different parts of the funnel. So it isn't entirely bottom of funnel, but it is far more intent-based marketing than say, Meta ads, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. Now, number 3 is no or a poor strategy. So this is another factor as to why a lot of the time ads are doing poorly. They don't know, based on point 2, what exactly Google ads are good at and what they're not. To learn more about that strategy, go to that previous video and understand what I do. But basically, I use different campaigns to hit different types of customers in that buying cycle. And so I make sure I have a nice spread across all of those so that I'm not just focusing on branded search terms. And on top of that, I'm not just focusing on cold traffic, because if I focus too much on cold traffic, my return on ad spend is going to be poor. So it is a bit of a balancing act. So if you don't have the correct strategy, so you aren't using the correct campaign. So if you're an e-commerce business, you're only utilizing display, YouTube, and search maybe, and you've got no shopping or PMAX, then your return on ad spend is probably going to be a lot poorer in those, where if you had a more standard shopping or PMAX focused strategy, your return on ad spend would be much higher. So not having a good strategy and on top of that, having the correct account structure and splitting campaigns out nicely, logically, and as accurate and specific as possible as to what you're selling, that can also play a big factor into why your return on ad spend might be poor. So number 4, incorrect campaign types used, as I just mentioned. So if you aren't using Performance Max or standard shopping and you're an e-commerce business, you're missing out on the vast bulk of sales. It's just a matter of fact. And a lot of the time, I go into campaigns and they might have, one or two campaigns set up in PMax and shopping. They're on a really low budget and they're putting all their money into some random search campaign that looks like it's doing really well, but in reality, it's a branded search campaign that someone's titled a specific product or a collection. They think it's doing amazingly, so they just keep pouring money into it. They keep changing things in it, and realistically, they're not getting any new sales. They're just capturing the branded traffic that should be split out into a separate campaign and not utilizing properly shopping or performance max. So not using correct campaign types. And on top of that, like on the campaign type is actually selecting the optimization that you want to go for. So if you're an e-commerce business, you want conversion value because you want more sales dollars. If you are a lead gen business, you're going to be optimizing for conversions. So the actual conversions, and then potentially setting a target ROAS or a target CPA. So number 5 is poorly implemented conversion tracking, if implemented at all. I go into a lot of accounts and audit them, and I'll see that they've got multiple conversion objectives, so they're feeding lots of weird data into the algorithm, or it's not capturing enough sales. So you can sanity check this by going into your Shopify dashboard or whatever your platform you're hosting your e-commerce business on, checking your sales and seeing, does it match what Google Analytics says? Does it match what you're seeing in Google Ads? Actually make sure that all of these things are working correctly, as correct as possible. If you have third-party tracking tools available and you can do that as well, then that's great. But poorly implemented conversion tracking is a very, very important factor, because if you're not accurately measuring your sales, you probably aren't going to be getting a true reflection on what your return on ad spend is. And that could be to the upside or the downside. So you might be overstating your return on ad spend or understating it. So having that in place and working is a very, very common way a very common reason that I see the businesses are struggling is that's not set up correctly. They're not utilizing it all the tools to their proper, ability, and therefore they're not tracking data correctly, and they're not getting the correct information into the campaigns, and they're making poor decisions based on that. Number 6 is being impatient. Most of the time, I actually find that you're able to improve return on ad spend over time. So normally the early return on ad spend can be quite poor. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's really high out of the gates. But a lot of the time, for the first few weeks, sometimes months, return on ad spend can be very, very poor. And as we go in there and optimize it, we can improve it. So you do need to leave these algorithms, particularly if you're using any smart bidding strategies or things like Performance Max, all of these automated bidding strategies that harness machine learning. You need to give them time. The more time, the better, because the more data you give it, the better. And on that, you want to be feeding it more data, uploading your customers, your lists. Anything you can do to give it more data is going to help it perform better. And the last one, building on that, is no or poor optimization strategy. So if you don't know where the leaks are or what to look for and then plug them, then how do you expect to improve your return on ad spend? If you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a strategy in place to improve what's going on or know when to make changes, it's very, very hard to do so. A lot of my content focuses on this. Go through the channel, it will talk you through it. So these are the 7 reasons, guys. By addressing even some of these things that I just mentioned, you will see an improvement in your return on ad spend. Something as simple as going and changing your conversion objective and setting a target ROAS can have really big impact on your campaigns. In fact, improving ROAS is normally fairly easy in my experience. It's probably one of the easiest things to do. It's actually harder to scale an e-commerce business than it is to improve the return on ad spend. In essence, if you're already getting sales, this is going to be easy. You're already getting the sales. So going in there, trim the fat and scale what's performing. That's it in a nutshell. So if you do need help improving your return on ad spend and making Google a profit generator for your business, please click the link below where you can apply. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.